Greetings, Exiles! In this video, I will go over the budget version of Chaos Blade Vortex. Let's talk about the pros first. The build is very fast, and it can do a variety of content. It is also relatively cheap to make, as most of the gear pieces can be self-crafted. It is also very modular, meaning you can upgrade it slot by slot as you accumulate more wealth, and most importantly, it will farm you a lot of currency. The cons are, however, it cannot do uber bosses, as it lacks damage, so it's not an all-rounder. Now, with pros and cons out of the way, let's start with the uniques that are being used in this build. This build utilizes 2 obliteration wands. This is how we get our explosion procs, hence, this build will feel extremely lacking without them. Next up is the gold. It provides a significant buff to our clear speed and occasionally provides defense buffs, such as more life, or energy shield, or extra max resistances. I suggest you get one with the Blade Vortex duration enchant on it, as without it, you'll have to micromanage your Blade Vortex stages a lot more. The next 2 items are self-explanatory, Death Rush and Badge of the Brotherhood. The wall roll Death Rush will cost you about 100 C, and I suggest you get one with 3 seconds of uptime of adrenaline. For the Badge of Brotherhood, I recommend buying one with at least 10% increased elusive effect, and anointing infused passive on it. Anything else is extra. Now, let's move on to the rare gear. For a chest piece, you will need a 6-linked sacrificial garb. You can buy the base from the trade site for about 1 Divine Orb. Alternatively, if you'd like to save some currency and do not mind trading, you can buy a set of the sacrifice cards for a total cost of about 120 C. The base already comes 6-linked with the item level of 100. Therefore, you won't need to 6-link it yourself. Then, you will need 1 Hunter's Exalted Orb and 1 Awaker's Orb. Use your Hunter's Orb on your chest base and then spam Reforge Critical from Harvest Bench until you get a T1 spell crit mod. Then, buy a base with a 10% chance to gain a Frenzy Charge on hit mod, and use your Awakener's Orb to combine the 2 bases. Make sure that before awakening them, you only have 1 of desired influence mod on each item. You're mainly looking for an empty prefix to craft life on your chest piece. However, if you get something nice from awakening 2 items, it'll ease up the gearing process for your other slots. Next, you'll want to buy the Dragon Scale Gauntlet Gloves with the Fractured Chaos resistance. Then, use some Shrieking Essences of Greed on the gloves to get 1 or 2 additional resistances in the suffixes. For the implicits, you'll want the percent of physical damage convert to chaos damage mod. The higher tier, the better. Roll the higher tiers of it as you accumulate more currency. The second mod is percent chance to unnerve enemies on hit. Any tier of this mod is fine. For the boots, you're looking to buy a hybrid armor and evasion 2-tone base with an enchant. Then, you'll need to slam the base with a Redeemer's Exalted Orb and harvest Reforge Critical until you get a reasonable tier of life and something useful in suffixes, such as dexterity or resistances. Finally, benchcraft 20% increased movement speed with an onslaught on your boots and your tongue. As for your belt, buy a Stygian Vice of at least item level 85. Spam any Screaming Essences that grant resistances until you get some life and a useful second suffix. For your second ring, you can buy a 2-stone ring base with at least an item level 80 and a Hunter influence. Then, spam some Harvest Reforge caster crafts until you hit the Despair Curse mod with life and resistances. Alternatively, you can just buy it from the market, but it's gonna be a bit more expensive. Let's take a look at the jewels now. Let's start with the most important ones first, the cluster jewels. Since the main idea of this build is to chain explosions, you will need to use 2 large clusters with unspeakable gifts notable on both of them. However, since this node has a very low weighting, it's impossible to craft one without fracturing the notable. Buying a 3 passive node cluster is also very expensive and doesn't fit the budget nature of this build. Therefore, I suggest you get an 8 node cluster jewel with 2 notables. They go for about 100 chaos each, and if you get one with an open prefix, you may try your luck by exalt slamming the jewel. Next up are your medium cluster jewels. You will need 2 clusters with precise retaliation and pressure points notables, and 2 clusters with vast power and magnifier notables. Try to look for the ones with dexterity or resistances in the suffixes. If you want to spend a bit more currency, you can get 2 jewels with vast power and tower and threat instead to get more life. For your remaining basic jewels, try to buy the ones with 7% increased maximum life and the remaining stats that you lack, such as strength, dexterity, and resistance mods. Ideally, look for all of these mods in addition to a percent increased critical strike multiplier mod. Lastly, you will need to buy a lethal pride jewel and put it near the mind over matter socket. You'll want to look for the one that gives at least 10% chance to deal double damage and buy it relatively cheap. I will list some seed numbers that match on the screen and in POB. The pantheons you should run are fully upgraded Brine King and Relicash if you don't have a corrupted blood jewel. If you do have one, switch Relicash to a fully upgraded Aberrath. For your flasks, you should run a generic Quicksilver flask for movement speed, Granite flask for extra armor, a Jade flask and Sin's Rebirth for more evasion rating, and a Diamond flask for a higher critical strike chance. You can later swap a Diamond flask for a Battle Faith once you have enough currency to buy one. You can also switch Jade flask for a Taste of Hate Sapphire flask if you prefer to be tankier to physical damage. Another noteworthy upgrade that you can make for relatively cheap is to include an Inspired Luring jewel in the build. Of course, that will require altering your passive tree a bit, but your overall mapping experience will become more pleasant. That is all for this budget guide. You can find more information about gem links in POB. Thanks for watching.